So I guess I'm talking to a lot of future elementary teachers. Are you guys all right with boogers and changing pants and all that kind of stuff? If you're not, you're going to be in for a rude awakening. But this is a topic, and actually this is the first time that I have spoken on this topic. And so after I botch it up, make sure you email me all the things I did wrong and how I can improve it. But I think that normally what I talk about, I go around and I speak to schools on how to reform their buildings and how teachers can get better. And I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of my background in just a second real quickly so you can kind of see that. But the topic today is very timely. Education has changed a ton in the past year, 2 years, 5 years, certainly 10 years. And it's a totally different ballgame now. And so what teachers coming to us as administrators, or teachers that are entering into student teaching, which a lot of you are student teaching now, what they're coming with, the skills that they're bringing to the table, are oftentimes different than what the principals or the actual teachers who are teaching in the building feel that they really need. And so what I thought I would do is try and give a few tips and talk a little bit about how to land maybe that first job for some of you. And also for some of you that are in attendance who are professors, maybe just bring you up to speed on some of the most recent research that's being done in the job field, and also for you teachers to give you some pointers and some tips as to where we're going. But a little bit about myself. I have my own company. It's called Instructional Innovation, and this was formed about a year ago. I realized I was having the opportunity to go and speak at a lot of places, and made it a point to kind of incorporate myself and do that. I actually have a team of 3 other consultants that work with me, and we go around, like I said, to schools, and we talk about school reform and how to move their school ahead, especially in regards to student achievement with assessment as a focal point. But to back up, I actually used to sit in this row at 7:45 in the morning for a chemistry class. I went here to Spring Arbor, and it's always a pleasure to come back, and I have to say it's by the grace of God that I'm standing before you tonight, because you can ask some of the professors who are in here actually had me, I believe Professor Williams had me as a core instructor, and I'm sure that they were like looking at it and they're like, we need his money, so we're going to try and keep him here, but it's, like not so sure if he's going to make it. So the fact that I'm here today is totally by the grace of God, and I just am so happy to come back to Spring Arbor anytime I can. But went to school here, graduated with a secondary education degree, a biochemistry major, and got my first job as a middle school teacher, and thought I would hate it. Realized very quickly that that was a passion of mine. Love middle school. I was teaching there for a while. My wife and I were married. She is a clinical psychologist, and so I get lots of free therapy, so that always helps too. But after I had been teaching for about 6 years, I realized I had completed my master's degree at U of M. I realized that I really wanted to move into the educational administration arena, and became an assistant principal, and then moved into my principal role last year. And it's been very rewarding, and it's been rewarding for me because, as Dr. Saylor said, I was actually placed to be the person who was kind of in charge of instruction. And that was what my background was from. I had done a lot with that as a teacher, and I was the beneficiary of a lot of really good training. And so that to me was just so fulfilling. And so I love my job, I love what I do. And, that's something that you have to say about your job. If you're doing something you don't like, you don't have a passion for, it's not too late to turn around and change course, because that's something that keeps you going. But that's a little bit about myself, and if you have any other questions about that, don't ever hesitate to ask. One of the things that I'm going to talk about tonight is using technology in a meaningful way in the classroom. And we're finding that a lot of times teachers are not necessarily prepared to do that. So I'm going to just go ahead and show you something that's real easy. We do this all the time in our classrooms, but I want to get a pulse. So if you have your cell phone with you, you can, if you have to pay for texting, you're still in the 19th century. But if you have unlimited texting like most people do, feel free to look at the screen above, okay? And I'm trying to get a pulse for who's here. And I know we already did this somewhat, but what you're going to do is you're going to text, the number you're going to text to is 37607, and then you're going to put this code in based on what you are in this room, what groups are represented. And this is just a really easy tool to kind of get the pulse of the group. Some people are still holding out and they don't even know how to text. Mostly not the students, I would anticipate. So if you can start to look up here, I have 6 people reporting already, 15 people reporting. So far, all of them, no surprise, are students. Okay? So not many of the professors are pulling out their cell phones. But this is a real easy way to poll. Okay, it's called Poll Everywhere. I'll talk about this one later. Most of you are students. I get that. I can talk to you. Okay? Here's a new one. This one's a little bit more open-ended. This one's going to look a little differently, but the question is, what is one thing you'd like to take away from this presentation? Before you walk out the doors today, what's something you'd like to take away? All right? So, you're going to do the same kind of thing here, but what's going to happen is you're going to text to 37607, but you're going to put the numbers 199639 space, and then put whatever it is you want to put there as your message. So right now, I want to find out what you want. What do you want to get out of this? Because this is for you. And I'm here for your benefit. And so I'd kind of like to get a pulse for what exactly it is you're looking for today. Why'd you come here? Hopefully it wasn't just because some of your teachers are giving you extra points. Of course, it's always a good incentive. There you go. How to best market myself as a teacher. It's a good one. Hopefully I have some time to talk about that. What I need to know going into my first interview. Pretty important. Some of you are already there. You're student teaching, you're getting ready to head into the waters. What principals want to see in an interview? How to get hired? What are the hot topics principals are bringing up in interviews today? New methods of assessment. Raise your hand if any of you have used this in a course that you've taken at university level. Raise your hand if you've used something like this if you're a student teacher in a classroom. Or even raise your hand if you've ever even been in a class where somebody's done something like this. Okay. So, nowadays, and we're going to talk about this more in a little bit, everybody's hand should be going up. Okay? So, there we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this one scrolling so I can refer back to this, because I can go through and see all of these different things. So, like this one. You're welcome. Just so you know, you can trace the text back. So, went to my high school. Is there a Blissfield graduate in here? Sweet. Go Royals. All right. So I'm going to refer back to that. But based on this very quick assessment, it took me 2 minutes. I now know through the use of technology not only who's here, but I also have a pretty good idea of what you're looking for. Aside from information about myself, you're looking for information on how to get a job. What's it going to take in an interview? What am I going to get asked? What types of curveballs am I going to get thrown? Okay? And those are things that I can address. But again, the point through this activity wasn't necessarily what I gained from it, although that was important. What was really important was that you saw that technology has to be embedded in everything you do in the classroom. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into this. So I'm going to propose a few learning targets. Most of you are probably familiar with a learning target because you're writing out your lesson plans and it's all pretty and you learned about how to make a learning target and all that good stuff. And that's all really important, okay? So I'm going to start with, we call these I can statements. Sometimes people use different terminology, and that's fine. They're all learning targets. But what I'm hoping to accomplish here, and we're going to refer back to this to kind of evaluate the presentation, is that you can identify reasons for gaps that exist between what students receive in teacher preparation programs and what they actually need to know to begin teaching. Okay? Hopefully you'll be able to see some of those. Hopefully you'll be able to evaluate your current practices or learning and determine if you're ready for everyday teaching or if you're helping students prepare for everyday teaching. Because there's two categories of people here. I can also identify a few things that principals are looking for in prospective teaching candidates, and that's something that obviously you hit on in your first assessment. But I want to talk about teaching today. Teaching today is totally different than even when you were in high school a few years ago. Okay, it's totally different. And that's as a result of a lot of things. Number one, technology is changing quickly. Number two, the laws are changing really quickly. And there's been a whole host of things that have put, especially in Michigan, educators somewhat on the defensive. Some of it's not so good. Some of it actually, I think, has some benefits, especially for you younger teachers. But I want to talk about what teaching is today and why it's a little bit differently. And there's really just 4 quick things. Good teaching, okay, the fundamentals of good teaching, you know, those things have been very important for a long time, and they haven't changed a whole lot. It's kind of like the wheel just keeps coming back to some of the fundamental things that we've known for a long time. But the job of teaching is totally different, okay? So understand the difference there. Teaching is, the fundamental aspects of teaching are largely the same that they've been for a long time. But the job of teaching is radically different. For one, I want to say, before I get into anything that would scare you away, it's a great calling. I think it's the greatest profession on earth. You get to impact so many people, okay, from a singular point. Think about a teacher that you've had that's impacted you. Those are the types of people you need to draw on in your memory. And when you're going through those tough days when you're student teaching or you have a rough day with a parent or whatever, you have to think about what passion you have for the profession you have. If you're going into this and you're saying, you know what, I need a job, I don't really know what I want to do, summers are off, you're going to be disappointed. This is a way to positively impact the lives of possibly hundreds of thousands of people. If you think about your career as a teacher and how many students you might impact and how many people they might impact in turn, it's a phenomenal opportunity. So take it for what it's worth. It's a phenomenal profession, and it still is. Okay? It still is. I would be remiss in saying that it is hard work. Again, if you thought that being a good teacher was you're going to go and your union sits you down and you say, okay, well, your contractual time is this to this, and you're going to get all your work done in that time, you're going to be really sorely mistaken. Because being a good teacher requires a lot of hard work. It's one of the hardest jobs there is. That's where I think there's a big disconnect in the public, and a lot of times in the legislature, you hear a lot of people talking negatively about teachers. Those are people that haven't understood what it means to be a great teacher. Why is that? Well, because all of us remember at least one teacher who sat in their chair with their arms on their head with a newspaper and their feet up on the desk, right? But what about the dozens of other great teachers? Right? They're not the ones telling the story of teachers right now. The people who are telling the stories are the minimalists. And those are the people who are going to be dealt with. But as you go into this profession, understand, in order to make it, it's going to take a lot of work. This is not an easy job. You're going to take things home with you. Those of you that are student teaching probably have realized that already. Especially in elementary school, a little boy, little girl comes up to you, this is what's going on at home. You're going to take that home. You're going to have tears at night. You're going to think about a lot of things that other people, when they go to an 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 job, they don't deal with. Okay? Not to mention the fact that you're going to be planning and grading papers at night. Teaching is complex today. And this is where it really boils down to the difference in teaching today versus teaching 10, 5, 6 years ago. There are so many things that you as a teacher have to be aware of, and I'm going to hit on some of these things today, that it's not like you just get to walk into your classroom and teach anymore. There's a ton of administrative stuff that you have to do as a teacher that you're being asked to do. And that's tough. And so principals are trying to do more to try and take that burden off of teachers so that teachers can get to the core of actually teaching. But the demands on principals have been increased exponentially as well. Okay? So teaching is a much different profession than it was years ago, largely because of the complexity. There's so many things that you have to do, and I'm going to talk about that one in just a second again. And the last thing I want to end with a positive again is it's very rewarding. I have letters that students of mine have written me. I was a 7th grade science teacher. I taught also 8th grade for a little while. And I have a ton of kids that have had letters that they wrote to me. And I'm saving those. They invited me to their graduation party. I mean, who invites their middle school teacher to that? I mean, that to me was like a big deal, you know. And it's a rewarding thing. You don't always get those positive things, but you hear about them and just know that this is a very rewarding profession. I'm going to head in right now and talk about the divide. And I want to get you up for a second because I want you to have a little bit of a discussion. As you think about, and some of you that are student teachers probably could be good leaders, so I'm going to split you out that way. But as you think about what teachers can do, what new teachers can do when you walk into the classroom versus what new teachers need to be able to do, some of you who are starting your student teaching experiences have been like, whoa, when you walked into the classroom the first time. Okay? So what I want you to do is, if you're student teaching, it seems like we had quite a few of them. Could you stand up for me, please? Awesome. So I'm going to have all of you spread out around this room. And I know this is a lecture hall, but I don't like to just lecture the whole time, so let's spread out a little bit. And we have a ton of student teachers here, and they're going to have some valuable insights. Now what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to find one of the people who are standing, and I'd like you to have a group of no more than 3 people. I think we can get by with that. And I'd like you to start having a discussion. What types of things do you, as the student teachers, notice are things you just weren't ready for? And if you're sitting down, what types of things do you imagine, or in your own experiences have those been? So talk about this divide. Are there things that you can identify right now, or things that you feel teachers know versus what they really actually need to know? Is there a divide there, and can you have a discussion about it? Okay? So we're going to take about 4 or 5 minutes to collect our thoughts. Ready? Go. Issue of the divide. What do teachers actually need to know versus what they do know? Anybody have any comments in their breakout sessions they're talking with their peers that they would like to share with the whole group? Guess not. Everybody's intimidated. Sometimes teachers are the worst audiences.
I'm student teaching right now, and one of the biggest things that I've encountered is the ability to be flexible. Because you come in and you're like, okay, like I have this set schedule that I need to get done, and then like 12 different people say, oh, we gotta go here and here and here, and I'm just like, how do I get all of this done? So it's very much so being flexible with not just like your teaching, but with your students too, and making sure that they're like on task, but at the same time be able to change things instantly.
That's outstanding. Absolutely. How many of you would consider yourselves to be type A personalities? Okay? Gonna freak out, just so you know. Okay, just so you know. All right? Who else? Yeah.
When you're going in, because I'm doing my student teaching right now, you have to have strong classroom management skills, because the students will be doing anything they can to push your buttons, and they will do everything. Especially in PE, what I've noticed is you'll ask the student to follow instructions, and you'll have to repeat yourself 3 times before they actually listen to you.
For sure.
You just have to be strong on your discipline.
Yeah. Are you in elementary as well?
I'm in middle school, and I'm also in the high school.
Okay. Middle school, trying to get them to line up in a straight line. Yeah, they don't understand that. Yeah, got it. Good. Anybody else? Yeah.
I would say the ability to play well with others. I'm in PE, and there's another student teacher that I have to co-teach with, and we have completely different personalities. He's very serious and like militaristic kind of, and I'm like a beautiful chaos kind of person. So when we try to run our classrooms together, it's terrible. And I can't stand him and he can't stand me. So I just think that it's true. But you know, when you get in those situations and you have to be professional about it. And we're both learning, so that makes it even more difficult. And we've gone at each other in front of our kids, which is not good. But we're learning how to be more professional about it. And then along with what Ashley said, just being able to have good classroom management. I mean, I have PE classes of freshman boys, and they're giving me a run for my money. So just being able to understand their needs, because they're just needy and they want attention, and how to give them the right kinds of attention to get them to do what you want. And part of that is classroom management, but part of that is meeting the needs of your students.
Sure.
And coming halfway. So.
Great. The guy that you're student teaching with, he's not in this room, right?
No, but
just want to make sure. Okay. All right. That's good. Anybody on this side of the room?
We were talking about the technology aspect. I'm not student teaching right now, but I just got my placement, and they have a smart board in every classroom at Northwest, and I've never used a smart board. And so we can come in and learn about technology, but we have to actually be able to use it. So I'm going to go play around with it.
Outstanding. Great comments. Everybody's got such good insights here. Yeah.
One thing I didn't realize going into student teaching is how many countless hours you spend after school, whether that be lesson planning or just cleaning up the room after a day of teaching and not really having time to do that throughout the day. And you don't really realize how much you have to do outside of the school day. It's not just a 8 to 3 job, it's like an 8 to 8 job. And our classrooms just got new technology. We really didn't have any at all, and so our teachers have been spending a lot of time on the weekends and after school learning that technology because they've never had it and they don't know how to use it.
Great, yeah. Boy, you know, it'd be nice. It's almost like it's a little late now, but the first class you should have as a freshman, if you're going into teacher education, should be a questionnaire. Do you want your summers off? Do you want to get out at 3 o'clock? And then if people answer yes to those, they should be counseled out. Right? So it is a challenging profession, and it used to be that way. People actually went into teaching, and it's not to belittle. I mean, people go into things for different reasons, but years ago, people actually went into teaching because it's a great family job, and I've got security, and I'm just going to I like having my summers off, and there is actually a lot of people that's the reason that they went into education. But now, because education's so complex, now they want out. They're like, this is not what I bargained for. And I can't help but feel somewhat sorry for them because it used to be that way. Okay? But that's part of why we're talking. And I'm really impressed with a lot of your understandings and some of the things you're saying because there's some of the same things I want to touch on here. But before I get into that, let me just say, and I recognize the frailty of the group when it comes to discussing issues like this. I don't tend to shy away from controversial issues. If you happen to be coming to the grading session, you'll see why that is. But I don't want anybody to think that I'm here to talk about the fact that colleges and universities are not doing a good job, because that's not the intent here. Because I actually feel that Spring Arbor did a very nice job preparing me. Now, my education here at Spring Arbor, if I had that now, I wouldn't be able to say that because education's changed so much in 10 years. Okay? But I felt like Spring Arbor really did a good job with that. And I've only seen one student teacher come from Spring Arbor, and I've been very impressed. Okay? But I see people from U of M, Michigan State, Eastern, Madonna. I've seen, from a lot of different places. I've actually had to hire several teachers, and a lot of the things that they're coming to us with are not the things that they need, okay? And that's why we're here tonight. So, school administrators across the country are seeing that new teachers are increasingly unprepared for the ever-changing classroom today, okay? It's hard to prepare for what you're going to see when you walk in. Teaching is not what it was even 5 years ago. I'd even say 3, okay? Talking about technology, there was an article I just read the other day, and it said, and there's a lot of work being done with iPads in the classroom, okay? But teaching kids how to use iPads is kind of fruitless because in a couple years, iPads are going to be like old technology. So it's about teaching kids how to use and create and make their own uses of technology and how to keep up with that. And that's a totally different skill set than what we've seen in the past. Most of the work done in teacher preparation programs is theoretical instead of practical, which puts pressure on young teachers. There's a lot of classes that, and I talked with a student who, they went to Eastern, and there's a lot of classes on theory and brain research, and all of those things are good to have as a foundation. I don't want to belittle those things because those are important. But the practical nuts and bolts of what you're going to face when you walk in the doors are things that I think you're going to need to know a little bit about. So, the job of teaching has changed. This is kind of a funny, this is from a teacher. I'm going to go ahead and read it because it might be a little small for some of you in the back. But let me see if I've got this right. You want me to go into that room with all those kids, correct their disruptive behavior, observe them for signs of abuse, monitor their dress habits, censor their t-shirt messages, and instill in them a love for learning. You want me to check their backpacks for weapons, wage war on drugs and sexually transmitted diseases, raise their sense of self-esteem and personal pride. You want me to teach them patriotism and good citizenship, sportsmanship and fair play, and how we register to vote, balance a checkbook, and apply for a job. You want me to check their heads for lice, recognize signs of antisocial behavior, make sure that they'll all pass the final exam. You also want me to provide them with an equal education regardless of their handicaps, communicate regularly with their parents in English, Spanish, Chinese, or any other language, by letter, telephone, newsletter, and report card. You want me to do all this with a piece of chalk, a blackboard, whiteboard, bulletin board, a few books, a big smile, and a starting salary that qualifies me for food stamps. You want me to do all this and then you tell me I can't pray, right? Teaching has changed, really, okay? And this is kind of funny, and it's said tongue-in-cheek, but if you talk to a teacher who has 1 year of experience, they'd be going, oh yeah, did all that, yep, did that. They understand, okay? So it goes beyond the methodology of here's some basic strategies and how kids learn. So there's two categories of what principals want you to know. And I'm classifying these into two categories. The first one are what I would call the basics. All right? These basics are things that basically all students coming out should know. I mean, teacher preparation programs have got these things down. They know how to prepare you in these areas. You should feel confident in these areas, and I'm going to talk about a few of them. But these are fundamental, essential, and what are expected that all teachers will have when they walk into the classroom the first day. So that's one category. I'm going to call the other one advanced, and these are the things that principals really, really, really wish you would know when you walked into the school, and most teacher preparation programs don't prepare you for these things. Okay? Spring Arbor may do some of these. It's a feather in their cap. Okay? And I believe that they're a great program, but one of the things I want to say is that a lot of schools don't. And these are the things, these advanced skills are the things that school administrators would hope that you have. And just so you know, and this is just to give you another little quick background piece on me, I serve on a board for the Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals. I'm one of 3 members on the middle level commission. So I speak with hundreds and hundreds of principals on a fairly regular basis. So a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about comes from first-hand conversations over dinner, over lunch, at a meeting. I collaborate a lot with principals, okay? And I work and I serve on this board that represents all the principals in Michigan. So it's not as though these are just things I'm pulling out of my hat as my own, although some of them are. A lot of them come from anecdotal information that I get in talking with principals, okay? All right, so we'll start with new teacher basics. These are the things that if I'm going over these and you're like, I can't do that, you may still have a couple years left in the School of Education and you're going to get those. If you're kind of in student teaching and you don't have these yet, these are some things you're going to want to study up on. These are things that we would expect everybody to know. Content knowledge. You need to have a strong content knowledge, and that's kind of the most fundamental piece. You can have all the knowledge about how to be a good teacher. You can have all the hard work, drive, and all those important things, okay? But if you don't know your content, you're going to struggle. And obviously your undergraduate preparation programs are going to get you there. I know that even when I was at Spring Arbor, we had methods classes where it's by your subject area. Those are critical because in particular, if you're an elementary teacher, you should have had some literacy training, okay? And Mathematics for people who are elementary teachers as well, and in particular once you get up into the secondary levels, you need to know how to do those content-specific things. But it's not just about knowing the content. We'll get into that in a second, but that's a fundamental thing that we would expect you would have, is at least a good grasp of your content. I'll give you an example. I did interviews this past summer for a Spanish teacher. We landed a blue chip. We are really pumped up. He is engaging kids. He's fantastic, okay? But through the interviews, one of the things that I wanted to see is I wanted those candidates to do part of the interview in Spanish. Why would I want to do that? I mean, if they can't speak Spanish, probably not going to be able to take kids and teach. If they have, let's say that they got bumped union-wise and they had to teach Spanish 4. How are they going to do that if they can't speak Spanish? Even Spanish 1 is done in immersion, so you have to be able to speak it quite a bit. So I had the candidate speak Spanish. This girl, who I felt horrible for, I felt so bad. I didn't even know how to compassionately let her down, but she started the interview, and when I said, okay, now we're going to be doing this portion in Spanish, and I have my 2 Spanish teachers there, and they're firing questions at her in Spanish, she didn't even know what they were asking her. She didn't know how to communicate. She had this great transcript. She had all this stuff that she had done, but her knowledge of the content was almost nil. Okay? So, needless to say, the interview ended. I mean, I wasn't rude, but we kind of sped through the questions and kind of moved it along, because you can't teach if you don't know your content. Okay? And I'm sure she was a wonderful person, and I'm sure she had a lot of good skills, but you've got to know your content. So don't go, especially if you're a foreign language teacher, do a study abroad first, or do something where you know how to speak. If you're a math person, they may ask you about doing something with your content. They may ask you to perform a lesson. They may ask you to do something. If you don't know the basics of your content area, you're going to be sunk. Okay? So that's number 1. Number 2, everybody assumes, all the principals assume, that you're going to come to them out of college, fresh out, with some basic planning and pedagogical skills. You need to know how to write a good, sound lesson plan from a long-term and short-term basis. Okay? Conversely, you should know how to incorporate that into some sort of technology. Okay? Most people don't use the old grade books anymore where they pull it out and they write it, and some people still do, but most people are doing their stuff. There's several software programs that can help you with planning, and some people just use Excel. But we're going to expect that you know how to come up with a good lesson plan, and if you don't have a good background on that, write down the name Madeline Hunter. Okay? She's an oldie but a goodie, and she is absolutely fantastic when it comes to the design of lessons. So please make sure that you know how to do that when you walk into the door. Pedagogical skills. These are basic questioning skills. You understand collaborative groupings and pairings. When it comes to instruction, you have some basic tools in your toolbox, so to speak. You're going to go in there, you're going to experiment with something. Those are things that your principals kind of expect that through your undergrad training, you will have some of those things in your toolbox ready to go. And then one person back here talked about this, basic classroom management. Okay, and I say basic because classroom management can get into a lot of different avenues. One of the things that I think is really powerful, if you haven't read anything about Love and Logic, write that down. Okay? A lot of you probably have heard a lot of that kind of stuff. But when you talk about seating charts, putting together your basic procedures and policies in your classroom and rules, those are things that your principals are going to expect you to know. Okay? So, just by a quick glance at hands, how many of you feel that these things you're feeling okay about? Excellent. Okay? So, that's exactly where you should be. All right? Most people in the field would love to see teachers with the following. So I'm going to get into some of these advanced concepts. First one. These are the things that I think, are going to be skills that many teachers don't come to us with. Being able to collaborate and work as a member of a professional learning community. This is really hard for a university or a school to prepare you for, but that doesn't mean that I don't want you to have it. Okay? And somebody in the back, PE teacher, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name, you talked about that explicitly, okay? And you did a good job of explaining how teachers are not inherently good at working together. They're not. And why is that? Because they've never had to traditionally. The traditional teacher sits in their classroom, shuts the door, and says, don't ever come in here. Okay? But that's not the way it works anymore. That's not the way it works. We are all geared in schools now to work as a team. We set team goals. We work together. We have to collaborate. We have to accept criticism when it's necessary. We have to be able to give criticism when it's necessary. And at the end, we have to hold hands and sing Kumbaya and be happy and walk out the door. Okay? So, learning how to collaborate is something that it's a skill that is not necessarily taught to many of you, and it's not something that you just have inherently. It's something that takes a little practice, okay? So, I have these little things in here, they're called can-yous, but can you provide constructive feedback to colleagues and most importantly, take it? Can you do that? And can you do it in the right methodology? Okay, because there's a certain way you have to work professionally and set norms and group norms to understand so that you don't violate someone's personal feelings. Are you familiar or trained in how to have an intentional conversation with a colleague or administrator? If you haven't heard about courageous conversations, intentional conversations, purposeful conversations, those are skills that are really important to know when you're trying to interact in a school, in a learning community. Most principals will tell you, new teachers coming in, they don't know how to work with each other. And you know what? Here's the good thing. The new teachers coming in are better than the old teachers. Okay? Because a lot of the old teachers, they see that as threatening. They don't want to work together, right? Because they know everything. Okay? And I don't want to minimize them because they have so much to offer with their breadth of knowledge and experience, but you as the newbies coming in, you need to figure out how to infuse that energy back into that community. But you have to learn how to work together. Adjusting your planning to accommodate the plan of others to maximize the instructional benefits. We work in teams. It's just a fundamental principle of most middle schools and a lot of elementary schools. Okay? High schools, even some of them are moving to this direction. If you talk about high schools, usually they're talking about departments. But in our teams, we use academic teams. So I have a math, science, social studies, and English teacher working together. Can you adjust? You know, you talk about the people that are type A. I want to do this lesson this time. I've got it planned out. I know I'm ready to go. But then the social studies teacher comes in and says, hey, we're doing the Civil War, and I really wanted to do Red Badge of Courage. Does that match any of the standards you're going to go into? Ugh, that freaks you out, right? But if you have teachers that are working together, even with the curriculum, you maximize instruction. Do you use the principles of collaboratively scoring student work? How often do you sit down with colleagues and score work and do those types of things? Again, not something that people are trained in very often, okay? And let me just say, a lot of these things are things that people get after they join the teaching ranks and they go to workshops and they learn how to do this. But these are just some ideas of things that I've heard consistently amongst staff. You teach sex education. What does it mean if kids are blogging and twittering? Okay? Now, for some of you, you're like, well, I know what a blogging is, I know what a Twitter is. But for some of the teachers in the schools that you're going to be walking into, okay, when they heard that the first time, this is the same conversation they had. What are these kids talking about these days with this Twitter business? You know? That is something that, believe it or not, they're not prepared for. And I know that your generation has a leg up. You're ready to teach with a lot of technology skill and proficiency. But using technology for a variety of applications to reach the kids, the needs of students, and engage them, if you're not employing technology as a regular part of your repertoire, you're not communicating with your students. I'm going to play just a quick little video. I think the music's on, or the sound is on.
Of course I'm a link. I think I tweeted it. I can't control what I say to people. I spend the whole day talking. I mean, I video chat, I Skype, I text, I tweet, I phone, I woof.
Wolf is a site that I'm launching to be the last word in social networking. For just $12.99 a month, Wolf links up all your communication portals so you are always within reach. It's part of the dog pack, as I call it. But look, why tell you when I can show you? I just sent myself a woof.
Brian. You have a Wolf on line 1.
Thank you, Aaron.
Okay. So, not that we have Wolf yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it came out. So, technology and how to use technology in the classroom is totally changed. And I don't feel, oftentimes, that even as young as many of you are coming into this business, I don't necessarily feel, and I know a lot of my colleagues do not necessarily feel, that you know how to integrate that into your classroom. A lot of schools prohibit that, and they put some limitations on you. For example, I showed you Pull Everywhere. Okay, that's a very basic technology use, but a lot of schools would say, well, you can't have cell phones in school, and you can't use them for educational purposes, so you're already hamstrung by some things, okay? But understand that that wave is coming, and that's a freight train that's not going to stop. So you're going to have to, you want to be on the front end of that train, okay? You don't want to be, well, we're not going to do that stuff, and we're not going to embrace technology. Okay, things are different now. I would tell you that I have several classes already in middle school. I have 10 students who are taking hybrid education. That means that they are taking an online curriculum coupled with a regular school curriculum. I have some kids who are totally online. I have some kids that take one class online. I have homeschool students that say, you know what, my parents don't know algebra, but they certainly can do all the religious education they want, and then the school can infuse that technology to teach them online. Do you know how to teach an online course? Do you blog? Can you use the web to create discussions and things like that in your class? Can you run an online discussion with your students? This is a big one right here. Can you allow students to create projects, discussions, and questions using a variety of technology tools as replacements for your traditional assignments when necessary? That one is scary, especially for teachers who are not used to technology. This is where you, again, have a leg up, okay? So be thinking. You all text. You all understand Facebook. You understand Twitter. You understand these fundamental things, and that is the language that your students are going to speak already at a young age. My daughter is 5, and I have an iPad, and she knows how to scroll through that iPad, fly all over the place already. Okay? She's in kindergarten. So understand that while you may not like some of those elements, it's coming. Okay? And you have to be able to teach kids how to use it appropriately. And when I say that, I'm saying that with, I don't think you have to throw out all your principles. I do not have a Facebook page, okay? And that sounds like crazy, right? But I do have a Facebook page, and I do have a Twitter account for school, and I tweet regularly to my parents, and I use Facebook regularly for parents and kids to get updates and information, to have online discussions and post things on the wall, because that is a way to effectively use it. I don't have one personally because I don't care think people care what I eat for breakfast, okay? But I have it for school, right? So you have to understand that, and my wife has one, so it's not like I'm totally against it. I get all the updates from her. But what I would say is that you need to know how to incorporate these things into your lesson. Google Moderator is another great one. I have teachers using Google Moderator all the time. That's a way to run online discussions with your class, okay? You're constantly providing feedback that way. You could structure your classrooms literally totally differently than the traditional classroom preparation program would tell you to do it. And you know what? You'd be speaking the language of your kids. And that's important. Okay? Can you run a flipped classroom? How many of you know what a flipped classroom is? All right. See, the professors here, they get it. Flipped classroom. Very cool thing. It's new. But basically what they're saying, especially in a lot of low socioeconomic schools in Detroit, they're trying this in some places. A flipped classroom is basically you do your homework in school and you do your instruction outside of school. Okay? So you're flipping it, right? So what happens, those teachers have to know how to use a variety of software applications to record their lectures, to figure out how they're going to do their lessons and do their demos and do all that stuff. They have to post that regularly. And then when the kids are in the classroom, all they're doing is facilitating, helping them ask questions, helping them get their work done. Radically new concept, right? Okay? Most people coming into the field would have no knowledge of that. Okay? That's a good thing to be aware of. If you're talking in an interview and you want to talk about technology, that's a new one. Can you teach an online classroom? Again, I have that going on. Yes?
Can I ask you a question? What is if it's in Detroit, do resource that you could give us to kind of look into?
Macomb ISD is actually doing a few things with it. The school, the principal's name is Green. I talked to him a month or so ago. I can't remember his, I think it's Bob Green. And he's, they've got their whole school is flipped, and it's a high school. And what you can find it, but what they do in those cases is they open up the community, they open up their labs, they man their labs so that kids can come after school, their parents can bring them over. They also have laptops that they check out. So there's a lot of initiatives with technology, but you're right, that is a limitation that a lot of people have. But you'd be surprised at how many people have computers that don't, you know, it's funny, I find so many people coming in to apply for free and reduced lunches, and they've got a Droid or an iPhone, okay? And literally that has become more essential to some people for communication and whatever than some of those other things. So flipped classrooms are unique. But could you teach an online class? Most of you probably by now, and we didn't have this when I was at school here, most of you probably have taken at least a portion of class online, right? Okay, Blackboard, you've probably done some more traditional kind of. If you could run an online class in your classroom, your kids are going to love that. Okay, that's important. This is texting for teachers. BTWBO, be there with bells on. Remember to study, big test tomorrow. Okay? Said tongue in cheek, but remember, people, if you want to get your students' attention, you got to get in their game, okay? If you don't know the texting stuff, which most of you do, okay, you're going to be behind. So for you guys, again, you got a leg up here. You know this. This is, for a lot of you, speaking your language. DNBL8. Do not be late. Like it. All right. Implement a balanced assessment system at the classroom level. Now I know, because I've seen Dr. Saylor's class, that in Spring Arbor you do a much better job of this than I have seen other teachers come. I'm not going to throw other universities under the bus, but I'll talk about another teacher that I had. They did not even know the difference between formative or summative assessment. They didn't know what the balanced assessment system even was. Okay? But you have to understand the basic tenets of sound assessment practices, and that's become more important than ever in education today. Let's see, I'm running short on time, so I'm not going to show the video. I have a little video on formative assessment that kind of clarifies some things that I'll show at the end if we have time. But formative assessment is cornerstone to your classroom and how you structure not only your plans, but your understanding of those concepts are very important. Can you manage a formative and summative assessment at the right frequency to maximize learning? Okay? Is your view of formative assessment just that? It's a singular assessment, or is it about a process of teaching and learning? Okay? Those are critical understandings that you need to understand and be aware of. If you go to a job interview, you want to talk about this. Very important. Okay? You're going to just keep teaching that lesson. Oh, this is what I planned for, so keep teaching. Okay? And the reality is, it's not going to go any better the second time. Okay? So, do you daily, hourly, minutely change your instruction based on the feedback that your students are giving you? That is a skill that takes some time. But if you can get some practice with that before you step into the job force the first day, you're going to have a huge leg up. Okay? And you're going to get better at it. But that's one of the most important parts of good teaching. If you think your students are here, and they give you feedback that says they're here, and you keep teaching them here, you're not effective. Right? So that's an important thing to be able to do. I already kind of alluded to proper feedback techniques. Do you constantly and effectively monitor student progress and learning? Do you know how to track students' progress towards learning goals? More importantly, do you know how to involve them in the process? Do you know how to get them to help track their own goals? Can you use data, charts, graphs to help track performance and help your students do that so that they know explicitly what's expected of them and how they're going to get there? That's a really, really important skill. Okay? Not a lot of new teachers have that skill. And again, I want to stress this. nobody expects that you have these. These are just like what we hope you have, right? Okay? So don't put tons of pressure on yourself. Here's another one. I have found very little training for pre-service teachers that can create sound test items that measure students effectively. Multiple choice tests are not the best assessment tool. We know that. Okay? Paper pencil tests are not the most effective assessment tool. So, can you generate assessments that aren't that? Also, can you generate assessments, okay, where they are multiple choice or they are paper pencil, where you're creating sound and fundamentally appropriate questions and how to write those questions? Because I'm going to tell you, in case you didn't know this, schools don't have this huge budget to hire people to come in and write their assessments for them. Okay? So you're going to have to know how to do some of those things. And a lot of teachers are very poorly trained in this area.